Hello, my name is Luis Alonso Flores Dueñas, and on behalf of my colleagues, I will be presenting the results of our research project. This is the outline of our presentation. We carried out an action research project which departed from observations that students would often ignore the feedback they received, and we worked with students in Year 3 of compulsory secondary education in Granada. A core concept for our research is feedback literacy. It emphasizes the need to make sense of feedback and being able to apply in it. It requires not only capacities but also dispositions, and we can see the four most important cognitive processes in their framework for feedback. Some of the most frequent issues with feedback have to do with ineffective feedback practices, the difficulties students face when trying to decode their teachers' expectations, and a lack of an organic inclusion of feedback practices in the curriculum. How can we help our students develop their feedback literacy and therefore their written performance? We can help them by making them aware of the objectives of the task before they start writing, and then giving them feedback to help them redirect their efforts and providing the time and conditions for them to improve their written performance. There are also effective models for feedback practice, such as this one by Mout and Mollo, which clearly give guidelines on how to avoid giving teacher-centric feedback. As to the context and the participants, this study was carried out in a 3.5-week study during my teaching practicum, and there were 24 students in the group where I implemented all these activities. 18 of those 24 students completed all the activities, and these 14-year-old teenagers were working towards a B1 or B1 plus level. There were two main objectives for this research project. First, we analyzed students' perception about feedback and the supervising teachers' preconceived notions about feedback practices. Second, we evaluated the effects of our research interventions. To study students' perception about feedback and the supervising teachers' preconceived notions about feedback practices, we used a questionnaire and a semi-structured interview. Then, to study the effects of the intervention, we kept an account of students' progress using their writing portfolio, and we administered a second questionnaire for students at the end of the study. The teaching interventions included an initial training for students on how to decode and implement the feedback. There were 3 writing tasks. For each of them, we used an approach on the genre and an approach on the writing process to support students' performance. And then there were a series of workshops after they had submitted their first draft and they received feedback. These workshops offer them the opportunity to apply backfeed techniques, that is techniques to get our students to read, decode, and apply the feedback they were given. The tool that we use for our students to keep track of their feedback was a writing portfolio. In this portfolio, they included all 3 written activities, and the portfolio allowed students to identify their strengths and weaknesses and prepare a first draft and an edited draft. As you can see in this first example, we can see that students submitted a first draft and the feedback was given. It included both feedback with a correction code. It identified their strengths and their weaknesses. This final draft intended to incorporate all this feedback, and students would always add a short revision memo where they would briefly explain what they had changed in their final draft. This is another example of the second task. Okay, so as to the perceptions of students regarding feedback prior to the study, we found that students think that they receive feedback sometimes. They stated that they implement the feedback they receive by thinking on how they could improve. Here is the visual representation of the thematic analysis. The supervising teacher thinks that students should first develop very strong reading comprehension skills before attempting to write. They should not rely on their intuition to get their message across. Instead, they should focus on producing appropriate grammatical structures. Therefore, feedback should also focus on appropriacy. Regarding the effects of the intervention on students' feedback literacy and written performance, we found that students develop a disposition towards feedback, and they also increase their capacity to spot and correct their own mistakes. We found that the mistakes that were corrected in each of the tasks and were worked on would not recur in subsequent writing activities. Also, we found that students increased their written fluency and there was a low degree of frustration during the interventions. To sum up, students had important gains in their feedback literacy and on their writing competence. We believe that individualized feedback and feedback workshops can play a detrimental role in gains for the writing competence. These are some future lines of research. We could investigate why some mistakes seem to recur, and it would be worth studying the long-term effect of these interventions with larger populations, and we should include subsequent sessions where peer feedback plays a more important role. These are our reference, and once again, this is our contact information. Thank you very much.